when the war was fought. Now, if any of you were, then I could have a conversation about this, all right? But we live today, and what we know today is that that conversation still needs to be held. Okay. On the other side of it, I'm also, a black woman who knows this too, that sometimes, some people want to hide behind the race thing when they go and put their foot in their mouths on the gender side. And I can't let you get away with it. So that's why I had to call out the snake charmer, because, it don't work that way. Okay? Just because you black don't mean you can't be wrong. Hello? Or that if because you're white, you're right. Come on, it doesn't work that way. And also, we have to sometimes, as women, call each other out. Because there is this assumption that I've seen, which is, oh my goodness, do you know, as a woman, I know how much we women suffer, blah, 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 and therefore it's all about me. No, it isn't. Coretta Scott King, the late Coretta Scott King, said something so profound so many years ago, and she talked about how you can't parcel justice out to just certain groups. It either has to go all to everyone, or it means nothing to anyone. That's where we are. And so, I'm looking at my time, Teresa. You told me I had a half an hour. I got 1.5 minutes left. Just relax. She was giving me the look. I know the look. I'm oblivious to the look. It's called, as one who's been a looker herself. I know, but okay. Well, sister, thank you. What I'm saying is that we all have work to do. As individuals, we all have to check ourselves. Make sure that we're really stepping on the good foot. We are all learning. We are all learning how to live in a diverse society and in a diverse world. And sometimes, we will put our feet in our mouths. That's okay, as long as when we do, we own up to it. Sometimes we will make, wrong steps. That's okay, as long as we get up and correct our course, as long as we stay in dialogue and conversation, as long as we stay open, and as long as we stay something else. Everywhere I go, for the last umpteen years, when I'm asked to do a speech, I always try to end my speech with one point. And that point always is this. Many years ago, I had the great privilege of getting to know the late, great Fannie Lou Hamer. Some of you may know who she is or was, and others of you may not. Mrs. Hamer was one of the stalwarts of the civil rights movement. Mrs. Hamer, who was a sharecropper, married to a sharecropper, born into a sharecropping family in the state of Mississippi, in poverty, in Mississippi when segregation and racism was at its height. And Mrs. Hamer, who, when the civil rights movement came to her part of the Mississippi Delta, was one of the first of the locals to stand up to be counted, which was dangerous. People were being killed. We forget, because this was back in the day. Mrs. Hamer, who, organized people for registration, for voter registration. And one night, as she was driving back from a meeting, her car was sideswiped. She was dragged out of the car and beaten almost to death. She survived, always walked with a limp, and never stopped moving forward. Fannie Lou Hamer, who then led a delegation of poor black Mississippians to the National Democratic Convention in 1968 to challenge the Democratic Party about the ways in which representatives were selected. And I always smile, because today the Democratic Party loves to call itself, the Great Rainbow, the Rainbow Coalition. Well, I know how that rainbow got to be colored. Okay? It happened because of one, poor, semi-literate black woman from the state of Mississippi who understood what justice was and was willing to stand for it. one day, I was spending time with her, and I said, Mrs. Hamer, it's like you were always there. She was always stepping up. When the women's movement, was gathering steam, she was right there. I remember hearing her give a speech once which she said, now, I don't know if I could spell that word feminism, but I sure know what it means. And she went on to describe exactly to a T what it meant. Mrs. Hamer, I said, so how do you keep it up? Going out there, day in, day out, year in, year out. Yes, you've seen some victories, but you have seen a lot of defeats as well. How do you keep going? And she told me the story that I'm now going to tell you. And the story was simply that there was this old woman who was blind and very wise, and people from miles around would come to her asking for her advice. And because her advice was good, her reputation grew. One day, two people decided, they wanted to, play a little trick on this old blind sage. And so they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to capture a bird, and we're going to bring that bird to her. And we're going to hold the bird in our hands. And one of us is going to say to her, we want you to tell us, is this thing, that we have in our hands living or dead? And if she says it's alive, we'll smother the bird. But if she says it's dead, we'll let the bird fly free. So they caught the bird. Dumb joke, dumb idea, kind of like the snake. And they brought the bird to her. She was sitting on her porch in her rocking chair. And they asked her, ma'am, can you tell us, is this thing that we're holding living or is it dead? And the old woman sat, she rocked for a while. Finally, she said, I don't know. All I know is it's in your hands. Well, I think you know the moral of that story. We each hold bird in our hands. We hold the bird of freedom. We hold the bird of justice. We hold the bird of truth. We hold our sisters in our hands. We hold our children in our hands. We hold our brothers in our hands. We hold this country in our hands. We hold democracy in our hands. Let the bird free. Thank you so much.